Hello, listeners, and welcome to a new episode of Business Compact, the podcast for founders, seasoned business owners, or everybody else who is interested in learning about the world of international business. In each episode, we will explore topics related to the creation, growth, and globalization of businesses, from founding challenges to international growth opportunities. Our guests will share their insights, personal opinions, and lessons learned along the way, inspiring you to take a closer look at each individual discussed topic. My name is Tobias Kerkhoff, and I'm the General Manager for internationalization at WannaBe International Business and your host for this episode. I hope you enjoy the upcoming conversation, and as always, if you have any comments, need support for your international business, or want to be on this podcast as a guest too, you're welcome to contact me under my email shown at the beginning of this episode. Finally, of course, feel free to subscribe to this podcast and our newsletter.
For this new episode, we decided to provide you with a look behind the scenes of WannaBe International Business, sharing some insights from our own startup journey, which has started in 2019. So welcome, my dear colleague and founder of WannaBe, Mario Schäfer. We have known and appreciated each other for many years now. We both share a passion for Latin America, especially Colombia, international business, and entrepreneurship. But feel free to introduce yourselves to our listeners and tell us a little bit more about the background of WannaBe International Business and yourself.
Thank you, Tobias. It's a pleasure to record this episode together as we are successfully collaborating for so many years. So very much looking forward to that. At WannaBe, we do business development for innovation-driven companies, strategy validation, business modeling, and partnering with industrial players for academic spin-offs, connecting academic research to a real world problem and industrial demand in the end. Furthermore, we support mid-sized companies in the expansions into international market. At some point myself, I studied biotechnology. After a short time in research, I noted that I am much more interested in the further development of these findings and what ultimately makes them enter into the market. After a decade in consulting and corporate environments, I founded WannaBe. The name originates from some kind of one-stop solution for international business, as we try to support our customers in all opportunities and challenges that move them via our international network. And finally, our mission is to help leaders and companies strip away the noise. I believe that scalability comes from simplification, especially when treating with scientific entrepreneurs. So we focus on the items that actually move the needle and like to be measured in tangible results.
You worked several years for some of the big players in pharmaceutical industry too as an employee. Still, why did you decide to start your own business instead of continuing your very successful professional career as an employee?
I would say success in the corporate world often comes at the cost of your own architecture. I reached a point where my professional achievements did not really align with my personal values. So I wanted to reclaim my time, location, independence, as you just mentioned, also from a family background. We're living between two continents. So I traded the security of a paycheck for the autonomy of building a system that serves my life rather than being a servant to the system. So I already have been a quite entrepreneurial person, have built up affiliates in companies before and had been a shareholder in startups and mentor at business school and some business plan competitions. The timing never is perfect. At some point, as my employer was divested to private equity and the carve out was some kind of chaotic, I noted that I got really close to a burnout. So I said to myself, and always with great support of my wife, that I just will start my own business now. Without a clear, validated business model, without customers, it could not get worse basically in that moment. So luckily all went well. With that, I learned that the price of growth is basically taking responsibility of my own situation, not complaining, even if the moment does not really feel right. Would also be looking forward to your opinion, Tobias, as I know that you also did some sacrifices in order to be more independent. Also would like to learn a bit about your 3 points on that.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for the question also, Mario. As you know, I have a background in consulting industry. So I think it's a good way to start your professional career also in the industry. You learn many things, you do a lot of networking, you get to know many different industries. But in the end, I totally agree on your point of view that setting up your own business on the long run is a better option or even a better choice. And I will also consider this for myself in the future. So as I mentioned, I can totally understand that. And besides, I think it's definitely an advantage if you know both worlds, or in other words, the career as an employee and the path of an entrepreneur. I have had the privilege of supporting you for many years, including my role as a sparring partner. Thus, I have also experienced some challenges over the past years, but of course also have celebrated many success stories with you. For instance, we have added to our core business focus from international expansion, another one focusing or including also mentorship and technology transfer. What else are your key learnings after more than 5 years of entrepreneurship?
This surely is a long list of learnings during being a founder and entrepreneur. Whilst the most important ones, I believe I mentioned this already before, simplicity is definitely a competitive advantage. I think complexity is just some way of hiding your uncertainties. If you're able to communicate your idea in a simple way and you note that people are buying in, that is basically the way to go. And most importantly, even in academic spin-offs where you're working with a very complex idea, but bringing them down into simple terms, what you really want, where you want to get, is something really important. Secondly, authenticity. So being an authentic person is, I believe, the best marketing strategy. People buy into who you are much more than what you build. So your word is the most valuable asset. And if you don't believe it, don't say it. Luckily, always had a good network that helped me on my way, especially at the beginning. And this told me that the network can be more important than all the knowledge or achievements that you can bring to the table. It's a hard truth. The second best idea can win if you know the right persons. And getting a right network, I believe, always goes via being an authentic person. The systems are only as good as the persons running them. If your internal world is some kind of a chaos, your business will eventually always also reflect that. Having seen many ventures, I firmly believe that the team is much more important than the idea itself. An excellent team can make an average idea win, whilst a badly coordinated founding team can burn an excellent idea and bring it to failure. Whilst the most important aspect still, I believe, is the timing. If the market is ready to accept your innovation, then you are very lucky. So I've seen, for instance, in projects with examples of vaccines in the production animal field. So they have been basically irrelevant in the past. And at some point, there was political pressure on the use of antibiotics in the food chain, which really puts the focus on these kind of startups and spin-offs with these kind of innovative technologies. And at this point, having the right idea, having the right team really made the ideas win. But this came basically from an external pressure. So I believe the timing is most important. Then comes the team. And just as a last point comes the idea. So I believe really the execution of an idea is much more important than the idea itself. So this brings me to this point that I believe that competence always have to go in front of presence. So I've learned that true leadership is not about being available 24/7 and also not demanding from the persons around you to be available 24/7, but working with the persons with a high competence and autonomy. So the focused effort is always better than the continuous work with diluted priorities. I believe that action beats the planning. So I've realized that one imperfect step beats endless thinking about a perfect plan. So once you did one step, there is no way back. These are basically my most important learnings, I would say, once it comes about starting and running a business.
Yeah, thanks for sharing these insights. And I'm sure we could have talked for hours about more key learnings. According to my opinion, a critical point for any business is dealing with failures. And it's only human that they occur and they will occur. I must also admit that I've made several mistakes myself in the past, but fortunately not twice the same mistake. So my question is, how do you handle failures?
You mentioned one really crucial point is not repeating the same mistake twice. Like yourself, I view failure as some kind of data point. It's not a reflection of my worth or the company's worth or the team member who committed some kind of mistake or failure. Basically, I believe we have to see it as a feedback that the strategy was wrong at this point in time, especially in a service company like OneIB. It is cheap to fail. So whilst, of course, it is not nice, but failing fast is always better than failing later. I would say allow myself a brief moment to process the emotion, and then I go back to the plan to analyze what needs to be recalibrated. Looking back, most of the times failure is just the cost for and the starting point somehow for growth. I try to avoid blaming others or external factors. I also try to be honest with project team members about these setbacks. And I believe that how you treat people during difficult times is even more important. And this is how they will remember you. It's always easy to collaborate and to bring projects forward in times where there's success, whilst in failures. And then in these moments of failures, you normally note much better whom is a really good customer, whom is a really good team member. And these points are much more important. I think you know Tobias and hopefully a lot of the people in our network that in general, I'm a positive and constructive person with this attitude and also the possibility to recognize faults, failure, just become learnings. And these learnings then contribute to the further growth of the business. And also, of course, much more important, sometimes the growth as a professional and a person.
Yeah, I can only confirm that. And I think it's also a cultural question. For instance, here in Germany, we still tend to look for someone to blame instead of taking responsibility based on a clear communication and recognizing a learning effect for the future. And of course, it's much cheaper failing in, I don't know, in a service environment than, for instance, in product development, which easily could cost millions of euros or dollars. So on the whole, I guess the existence or creation of a culture of failure tolerance is essential for the future success of any business. What else are your key recommendations for future entrepreneurs? And due to time issues, I think it's sufficient to name 3 of them.
Definitely, as we always want to be efficient, I will definitely limit it to 3. So the first is to build a system and not a job. If the business can't run for, let's say, 2 weeks, a month without you, you don't have a business. Basically, you have a high stress job. The second one is investing in inner work. I firmly believe that our business always will only grow to the extent that we are willing to grow as a person. So we shall not lose our authentic core, sincerity, and our unique origins that basically can beat much larger and the fancier competition somehow. The third advice would be to prioritize action. So not preparing too much and test for our ideas. So we have to assume the ownership for every outcome. And the only way to make things work and to drive a change is to take action.
Yeah, thanks for sharing these insights. And again, I guess it's a cultural issue. Here in Germany, we strive for developing 100% solution or for issues. Whilst in the US, for instance, people start, fail fast, and then learn and improve their services or products. But they don't come up with a 100% solution, which, according to my own opinion, is almost impossible. A debate that keeps coming up is related to the required time dedication of an entrepreneur. Or in other words, is it possible to set up your own business with less than 100% time efforts or even in part-time? According to my own experience as a startup advisor now for many years, I think this highly depends on the situation of your business. If you are an early stage startup, still working on your business model or the development of an MVP, this might be possible even part-time. But if we talk later on about scale-ups with the need for significant funding, team development issues, or internationalization, this requires in most of the cases full-time focus and 100% time dedication. What's your personal point of view?
I believe yes and no. Especially in the beginning, I would say yes, provided you have 100% dedication of focus, not so there's two different things. One is the 100% time dedication and the other percent is 100% dedication of your focus. Many times it's not about how many hours you put in, but about the quality of the systems you build. If you focus on the high value tasks, basically the core tasks, as I also call them in my book, Doing What Matters, you can make more progress in 20 hours than most people perhaps do in 80 hours. However, you must be really disciplined with your boundaries that you put to yourself and to others. Sometimes the reality is, whilst you might start part-time, the real business growth just can come and will eventually require the full price of responsibility and taking full ownership and also full time in your business. Still, I believe the focus over hours is much more important, so that it's less about the hours and more about the focus and the ownership when you're working. In the transition phase, I believe you can start, but what you still, if you want to really have a groundbreaking business, you cannot take on and carrying the old bricks of your previous career habits. So you really have to change, and then you really have to dedicate 100% of the business. I've also seen that sometimes it's difficult to scale a service and consulting business like one IB whilst being active and occupied with projects of customers. So this sometimes basically business growth and working for customers sometimes is one is going against the other. So you always have to, it's always some kind of trade-off. But if you really want to grow as a business, I believe 100% dedication of time and also 100% dedication of your focus is needed.
That's a good point. Also clarifying the difference between focus and time dedication. And this totally makes sense to me. Moreover, especially in the beginning, founders tend to be involved 100% in the operational business. And later on, it's difficult for them to let go and to focus more on a strategic view and not be involved so much in the operational business. Last question, which also tends to end up in a controversial discussion. Can anyone become an entrepreneur?
Technically, I would say yes, but not everyone should be an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship requires a high tolerance for change and basically the courage to dismantle your own identity in a repeated way. I would say being an entrepreneur is not a career choice. It's a commitment to a certain lifestyle of constant problem solving. If you value growth over comfort, then the path of entrepreneurship shall be open to you. So If you're willing to shift from basic execution to navigating through complex systems and making things work, this is a good base. This is a good condition. Definitely, it requires a mindset shift to assume ownership over your own activities. And the main barrier is not talent. I would say it is the willingness to take that first imperfect step and then accept the responsibility that comes with it. So for myself, it's really about attitude, mindset, and responsibility. If you're fine and if you just would like to execute tasks that others give to you, then basically entrepreneurship is not the best solution for you. If you are responsibility, if you're curious, if you want to make things growth, and if you're okay in being uncomfortable and not having a really fixed life setting, then of course, entrepreneurship is the best way to go.
Yeah, I totally agree. From my point of view, I guess theoretically, maybe anyone can or could become an entrepreneur, but in practice, entrepreneurship is not for anyone. And let me tell you why, or explain it a little bit more. As an entrepreneur, you need to take risks, handle or even feel comfortable with uncertainties, think both strategically and hands-on. And that's clearly not for anyone. Some people, as you've just mentioned, Mario, might prefer the same daily business, predictability, and continuous career development. If this really exists is another question. And I would like to emphasize once again that neither one way nor the other is better. They just reflect different choices, mindset, and lifestyles. So thanks you once again, Mario. I really enjoyed this different, very personal episode today. I'm sure this is an inspiration for many of our listeners, and I'm really looking forward to the future of One IB International Business, new projects, learnings, and business partnerships in 2026.
Thank you for the conversation, Tobias. Like always, a pleasure talking to you. And of course, looking forward to new projects, connections in 2026.